So we come on to the first main line that you can get in the max lang, really, the max lang attack, which occurs after the moves e4, e5, bum 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 bum, and now knight to f6 is what we moved on to. We've covered everything else now, and d4. Remember here, don't castle because knight takes e4 is annoying, and we want to be able to meet knight takes e4 with d takes e5. So black really has to take on d4, otherwise it's worse without struggle. And now we castle because knight takes e4 is playable, and that's actually in the next video. Probably the most popular line in some respects, but the two ways that black can play is either taking that pawn or bishop c5. And bishop c5 is what we're concentrating on here. Now, a quick reminder, the other move order that can get to this position is with bishop c5 here, when we castle and we play our gambit, and now this one. So you can transpose some what we've looked at earlier on in this course as well. So after this move, bishop c5 seems like a very logical move, and it doesn't allow us the simple knight takes d4. And actually the problems we saw with bishop e7 is that we don't even need to do any heroics. We can just play knight takes d4, and this gets our pawn back with a nice advantage, risk-free, and still an aggressive game here. So bishop c5 is saying to us, right, I'm going to fight to stop you getting the advantage here. I'm going to at least make it tricky for you. And now the most critical move, the max lang attack, and the move that we're recommending here, because it's the most fun and it fits in the most aggressively sound move, e5. And now nearly always played here, and quite simply the best defense is the move d5. I mean, this has to be black's reply to e5 in a number of variations, and without this d5 move, black would just be in trouble, which has been shown in a lot of games. Even going back to the 1850s, when Max Lang was wheeling out this exciting gambit on the white side, his opponents realized that they needed to play d5. And I say going back to the 1850s, if you think how chess has developed over the last 170 years, it's been quite incredible, the standard of play. So you kind of look at those games going back, 200 years or whatever, and you should take them with a pinch of salt, because you've got to realize that, the defensive ideas that players would play were pretty appalling. Morphy would crush his opponents with great games, but his opponents played like absolute patsers sometimes. It's just true. I'm not even being rude. It's just the truth. You look at their games, you're like, oh dear, how can you do that? Maybe it's easy. Of course, it's easy for me to say with computer analysis and hindsight, but it's quite funny. So before we come on to d5, which is the main option and what we want to mainly concentrate on, I think in these cases, I was thinking, I honestly don't know if I should be showing you the main lines first here and getting into them and then going to the sidelines, or doing the sidelines and then going to the main lines. My way of thinking, I don't want to accuse you of being lazy, but is let's get the sidelines out of the way and then do the main lines, because you will probably face the sidelines. And that means you'll stay watching the video until you get to the main lines. And my recommended way of learning this course, one of the most fun courses I've done. I mean, I love the energy behind the moves we're showing here and playing. One of the main ways I think you should learn this is just put away an hour a day. If you can put away more, great. But if you put an hour away a day, or even let's say you've got 5 hours a week, it's a lot to give. But if you seriously want to improve, an hour a day, I'm trying to make the videos all under an hour. Just do one video a day. Just take your time, play out the ideas, do a bit more, practice them out, and I think doing that is a great way to learn and have a life as well. So let's have a look at the other moves. And okay, there are some little points we need to know about them. But knight to e4. is just really bad. It doesn't quite lose a piece, but it's very close. I mean, the knight is just jumping into no man's land. And we don't need heroics here. Bishop d5 is tempting, but that allows f5, and then the knight will come back to f6, attacking the bishop. So queen e2 is even stronger because we line up against the king and the piece. d5 is pretty much forced. There's nowhere that knight can move. If f5 now we can take, and the other point is this knight can't move. And after d5, well, again, Morphy-like, knight g5. It is a massacre. Texas Chainsaw Part 5 on the chessboard. Blood on the chessboard. And here the pawn can't capture the bishop because of this one. Well, I mean, okay, like I've said before, sometimes I don't need to comment on the position. Just look. If it doesn't require commentary, I'm just going to go like that, okay? It doesn't require commentary. So d5 has to be tried, but now we open up the position, and we're not a pawn down now. The knight has to be defended. f5 really is a move black should avoid when we put our bishop on c4 and move free, because knight bd2 here, and black's position is already hopeless. That king is dead. Let's say pawn takes, knight takes e4, f takes, and now a very clever move here. And you know, never, even when you've got a really good position like this is, never rush into the moves. And one of the things with taking this pawn is that black may try to get the queens off. Still good for us, but why not bring in our last piece and stop that defensive possibility? And if you spot bishop g5 here, you're going to win the game. And now, what if the queen moves? We take that with checks, and knight e7 is best. And now, again, queen takes e4. Of course, there's nothing wrong with that move, but the computer even indicates there's a better move here. And it indicates that knight h4 is that move. And this stops black from playing h6. So, for example, after queen takes h4, he can try to survive with this move. I don't really believe it. So, I mean, we don't, you know, this is just good as well. But knight h4 even stops this because of this big check over here, which is going to clean up. And again, we're just showing you what the top computer programs suggest you play. But in all honesty, there's a number of options here. Let's go through it quickly because it's not that relevant. d5, and now the queen does come in with check. If the king goes to f8, then knight g6 is one of the ideas behind this when we're going to take everything. Nice little check there. So the king has to come to d7, and now, well, let's just take that pawn. Equal on material. The king has to try to run away. Let's take that pawn, extra pawn with the attack. c3, another way to open up lines. Enough said. So f5 is horrendous. Knight e4 is horrendous, but queen e2, f5 is really bad. After this, you've got to try bishop f5, try to develop. But black's knight is really in a precarious, it's on the edge of a cliff there, and it could easily fall down and kill itself. And now knight e2, black's got to try castling with the idea of going rook e8. This is the only way he can try. We're a piece up at the moment, and now we might as well try and keep that energy going. Remember, this course is about looking for the most energetic moves. One of the reasons we love putting our bishop here in these lines is because of f7. And here, we're a piece up, so we can afford to sacrifice on the square. And after king takes, can't see anything else. And white will pick up the bishop with a decisive advantage. There we go. So knight e4, just a terrible idea. Knight g4 is mildly better because at least the knight is not going to lose itself there. We need to play that Eminem song now. You've got to lose yourself. Well, that knight is no, it's not really relevant because that's actually a very positive song. This is not a good way to lose yourself. And here, just simply defend the pawn. And one of the main ideas here is we just want to go h3 when the knight can only go back to h6, and then we shatter black's pawn. So let's say black castles here in the position. Well, if black does castle, and maybe this is, even what you should do. Well, now we play h3. The knight has to come back, and we shatter that position. Not many players would want this position, right? Look at that king. And here, another move. Let's see if you can spot the move here. There's a number of ideas, but you've got to bear in mind that black does want to try to get some play in the center. This is only, again, you've got to, as well as looking at your own ideas, and I think it's clear, if you're only looking at your own ideas, you'd be like, right, yeah, we're just going to do this, game over. Or maybe you're thinking, okay, I'm going to try to swing the queen in. But if we look at, we have to always get into our opponent's mind, even when we're playing this incredibly sharp system course here, we need to think of our opponent's best moves. And it's clear he's going to try d5. So if we go knight d2, d5 is giving him some action in the middle of the board. And we don't really want to allow that. So there's a better move. And this is a move, again, it comes up time and time again in this course when there's a pawn on d4. We've seen it in the model games. And it is the move c3. And I really like this move because it's after d takes c3, stopping black's idea, and we keep our initiative going now with the knight coming in. If black plays d5 here, well, okay, this might be a better try, but we can still step back to the square, and we're going to be taking this one, or our knight is going to win on d5 with an ideal position. So let's have a look at what can go wrong after c3. Remember the c3 move, very, very nice idea. Pawn takes, knight takes, and now d6. What else? And now knight e4. We are now coming this way with advantage. Bishop f5. Well, I suppose here, if we come in here straight away, we don't have a good follow-up. So we can actually even just take the bishop and keep the queens on. We're a pawn down, but who cares? We're going to now bring our queen slowly around. So let's say queen e7, queen e3, king g7. And now I like bishop d5. And actually, okay, black's defended the best he can, but we're now not going to checkmate him, but we are going to take on c6 and just start mopping these pawns up. And positionally, we're big advantage. So maybe black can just about get away with that line, but it's not something you'd ever prepare as black. I mean, you'd never like, right, my amazing preparation. I've got Magnus Carlsen later. What's going to surprise him? I know. Knight g4, knight h6, destroy my king side and try to grovel on with good defensive moves. Oh, yeah, that's the move I want to play. You'd have to be a real gluttony for punishment to give this one a go. And after bishop f4, well, d6 has also been tried. And this is a way to make some sense of this move. Seems a bit more logical to me. But now we should open up lines, which we generally always do given a chance. If you've got a lead in development, open up lines. Take on d6. Black really has to take back. And now let's get that king while we have a chance. Rook e1 check. The king now probably is advised to move. If black plays bishop e7, what move could you play here? And maybe this is a move that actually is not so obvious in some way, but we did just talk about it. It's a strong gambit move. I say it's not obvious because it might even allow the queen exchange of queens, but it is just a strong computer move. It is just c3. And this is a very strong gambit line. And if we're allowed to take back there, black still has some problems. I mean, it's just about playable, this line for black, but this knight has just lost time and we're going to get a very nice position. So d takes is critical, and now just knight takes c3. And maybe the c3 move's quite hard to see because you might be put off by queen takes d1. But if black takes it, after rook a d1, we're a pawn down. But c7 is really hard to defend. It can't be defended. And when we win that pawn, our better development, look at our rooks. Our rooks are lashing down the center. Will leave us with just a nice edge. Let's say castles. I'd rather take there the knight, so let's bring the knight in. And after this one, well, we have to defend there, so let's slip back. And now I want to kick that knight back. We're always going h3. And when it's come back, well, now that knight takes allows the rook to move. Bishop takes keeps our knight in the center. And with g4 coming, entombing that knight, which has been a problem of black's play, white has a sizable advantage. Look at white's pieces, centralized, all good. Black has some pieces offside. Knights on the rim, they drop off, don't they? Or are dim or stupid or something like that. So knight g4, bishop f4, d6 looks a bit more logical way that black can play. If we take here, black has to take this back. We check. Bishop e7 allows the clever c3. So king f8, I feel, is a better try, but just immediately we can see with that rook there, it's not going to be great. And here I recommend we just keep it simple. Take on d6, queen takes d6, and this actually occurred in the game Rosalimo versus O'Kelly in Galway, one of my favourite places. A lovely little place in Ireland. Got some lovely oysters and fish over there. And I do recall ending up in a casino playing poker at about 3 a.m. during an Irish weekend tournament when the next game started at 9 a.m. I think I got back to my hotel around about 6:30, so enough time to just about have breakfast and play the game. I don't know why I'm going on about this, but just in case you want to know what I used to get up to. Not so much anymore. I'm older and more. It punishes me more these times now. So, okay, well, here, again, we don't need to be in a rush to win this one back. c3 is playable, but in this case, I think it makes more sense to go knight d2 because we're hitting the queen with a tempo. Let's keep the queens on this time. And if that knight can come to e4, it can also come to g5, everything playing. Bishop f5 is an attempt to stop that. And now h3, we like kicking this one away. When the knight goes back, we have quite a simple way of playing this because black has managed to stop our threats. And okay, we've pressurized him as much as you can. This move never really works because of bishop g6. But if we play bishop b5, we can now just regain our pawn. And black is going to be playing with this horrendous rook on h8. So this is just a simple advantage. Okay, well, we are covering these sidelines. We have to cover these sidelines. So after bishop c5, e5, we've now covered these two bad knight jumps where you just have to. I think the key is, let's just do a roundup of those knight jumps with knight e4, queen e2, and you don't even need any general principles here. With this one coming here, well, let's develop with bishop f4 because it makes more sense to bring our bishop out now because bringing out your minor piece is correct. If we're given a chance, we're going to take that knight there, and the key move is c3. And key move in c3 comes up in a lot of lines. If black plays d6, well, we take this one. And if bishop e7, what is the key move? It's again c3. If the king moves, well, now c3 is not as good. Let's get rid of the bishop and just play simply with the knight. We can, given a chance, try to get to g5. But if that's kind of stopped, well, we don't really want to go here and allow exchanges. Kick the knight back and then just go for bishop b5 because we're going to win our pawn back with a nice game. So after e5, d5, the best move. And this is what you're most likely to get. We continue by taking on f6. Very exciting, these positions. Black is forced to take on c4. And now we take on g7. And what a fascinating pawn structure this is. And the reason me and Richard, gave this is, again, it fits in the most aggressive way to play for white. But it also, again, gives us that better king safety. Throughout this course, every line you play, your king is going to be safe. Your opponent's king is going to be weak. The only real danger you're going to have is if, you overdo the attack. You maybe panic and you try to throw too many pieces at your opponent and it backfires. As long as you know when to, sometimes you have to back down with the attack, right, throughout this course. You're coming at your opponent's king. He defends. Okay, well, we're going to have to change a little bit and just go for a small edge in a lot of positions. But it's really nice having it in your mind that your opponent's going to be panicking more than you because his king is so weak. And you can just see here, the king is weak. Now, I think it's fair to say black can pretty much equalize in some of these lines. I still prefer white. You can make your own judgments, but he has to play very, very carefully. For a start, rook g8 played. And now our move, which we looked at in the model games, is bishop g5. First played in Farini, Tartakova, Baden-Baden, 1914. And this rapid developing move may also catch out some of your opponents who are probably more used to the more logical move, rook e1 check. I say logical because it brings a rook on open file and checks. So it has a little bit of surprise value. And after this bishop g5, well, black can go wrong immediately. Black should play bishop e7. This is the only way you can try to keep equality, as actually found by Tartakova those 106 years, 107 years ago when this was first played. But other options, again, we saw some of this in the introductory game, can really be bad. Moving your bishop back might not, to me, it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. So let's go through them and show you some of those other dangers. So queen d6 is simply bad, actually. But I think a lot of people would be thinking about moving the queen here, because if you go queen to d5, well, we'll come to that in a minute, it runs into knight c3, developing move. So they might be thinking, well, I want to go queen d6, and I want to try and get my bishop out, maybe try to castle at some point. You know, so this might be played, but it's actually horrible, because now we go rook e1 check. You have to, as black, block that one, and now just simply bring in the last piece into the battle. Knight to d2. And once again, this idea of bringing a knight to e4 is you know, when you're thinking of these lines, where do I put my knight? I think normally you want to try to get it this route in, right? Or somewhere like this. The other way you can consider getting in is by playing c3 and trying to take him there. But clearly, c3 ideas are not working here because black's strong pawns. And those pawns are strong. You know, if our attack fails, then those pawns could win the game if black gets castle queenside. But he's not going to get castle queenside here. And our major threat, as I'm sure you're aware, is floating. So queen d5 is as good a move as any. And now we do come in and we're threatening this big check. So black has to defend that square. Only one way of doing that. And now the move bishop to f6. And this means that black can't solve his problems, because if he does castle, okay, he gets this move in. But now we just win the exchange, and that should be enough to win the game. These pawns are not that strong. They're strong in some cases, but they're not a game winner. So black still can't castle, and after bishop f6, it's not easy for him to make a move, and we're just going to try to win this pawn when we're going to be actually even a pawn up. So queen d8 is one of the only ways you can try to relieve that pressure. And there's a number of strong moves here, and let's just keep it simple. Bishop takes d4. And after this one, knight takes d4. And okay, black's going to be a pawn down unless he grabs this one. But now knight takes e6. You can't swap queens because that's check. And here, well, queen f3 is actually stronger than the check. Because the check does allow some rook g6 moves or the king to run. So if we went check there straight away, I'm assuming black's king will now run this way. And we don't want that. So first queen f3 with simple developing rook d1. And black is really struggling to move again here. And after rook f7, now we go queen here. And this gives us that little bit more pressure. And okay, queen h5 is also good. And what are we doing in these kind of positions? Well, our main idea is rook d1 and then the rook swinger. Rook e3 around to this square or to g1. Our knight dominates. It's a winning position, basically. Nothing to be done here for black. There's one nice line here. If queen d5, which, you know, is the only move where black can try to get out of trouble because we haven't got time to go rook d1. There's a beautiful move here. Knight f6 check. Has to be taken with a bishop, and we just win the queen. So that's a nice little touch. So after again, I'll go through from the start, and I probably won't do this again, just to give us a feel of those moves so you get used to them. Knight f6, and now we're playing d4 here because we've got to immediately do this because e4 is on pre. And now we're going to castle, bishop c5. We attack that one, d5, the best move. Now we go munching. That pawn is a greedy little pawn. Yeah, let's take them all. And after the rook moves, we now don't go rook e1, we go for this move. We just looked at queen d6, which is ill-advised because the check and the tempo we're going to gain. So after this one, well, what about queen d5? And we saw this in the introductory game. This is not nice for black. I mean, black, if he gets one more moving, fantastic. But as we're also going to see in the next video, it runs into knight c3. This is one of those rare cases our knight comes here, can't be captured, the queen is on pre, the queen has to run again. And as Li Chao played in one of those model games, we now give a check, and we now come with e4 with everything. We've got everything we want with tempo. We've got knight h4 ideas, trapping that queen. Remember that idea? We got knight f6 ideas. Black is losing the queen most probably here. So queen d5, you can't play. The only other option is set for the main line, with the best line, bishop e7, is f6. But just the look at this move to me, you're now, if I start slavering here, you know, try not to. I mean, it's very hard to sometimes hide your emotion when you're actually at chessboard, and I do love the expressive chess players like Kasparov used to be. You know, if you're, you know, Kasparov was the daddy-o. You know, his opponent would play a bad move, and he'd be like, you know, he'd literally be like, he'd be like, you know, he'd be looking at his opponent, and imagine how poor his opponent would feel. His opponent's played what he thinks is the best move, and Gary, clearly the strongest player ever at the time, starts giving you that look. You're like, you just want to like crumble away, right? And the other can be said if you miss a move. You know, like this is often what I get like more. I miss one of my opponent's moves, and I'm like, oh, you know, that's also. But I love these expressions. But f6 to me raises an eyebrow, and now yet again we should check. There's no bishop e6 here, and bishop e7 doesn't work now because this one is just winning. So white's, I mean, I guess knight e5 can be tried, but I mean, knight takes e5. I mean, you know, this is not going to be nice, is it, for black? In actual fact, the only way black can try is bishop d6 when check comes in, and well, this is just horrendous, right? I mean, yeah, I mean, horrendous as in mate next move. So the king has to move, and now after king s7, well, bishop h6 is just simple and good. And we're now just actually going to try to play knight h4 and queen here, checkmate. And funnily enough, this actually was tried by one of Magnus Carlsen's second, Laurent Fressinet, who I think shares a birthday with me. And he played this in the Olympiad, Nigel Short versus Fressinet. Fressinet played this f6 idea. So he may have thought that he had some interesting preparation here, but I don't like black's chances. There's so many ways he can go wrong. And in that game, Fressinet tried rook e8, which is the best try. I mean, king g6 has been played. I mean, one brave king, that one. When there's no immediate way we can punish this, we can't go knight h4 because that king will just, you know, gobble, gobble, gobble. And, you know, we don't want to do that. But queen c1 is simple and good, keeping the threat of this one. I mean, look, again, this whole course, king safety. Look at that king. When black has to try queen d5 to try and just centralize. And now we continue with the check. And funnily enough here, the king should come to h5. I mean, I can't believe I'm even looking at this line. But it is a line. It is a line that computer gives. Because if it comes to f7, there is now queen d1, funnily enough. And now black is sort of shorter moves. This queen coming back here is a key, brilliant move. And we're just going to do our other ideas of knight c3 is one idea, right? And the other idea is, if we can't play knight c3, is to come with the knight to this square. And let's say rook d8. Now we come actually into c3 anyway. I thought knight, I remember looking at knight d2 here, but Richard's obviously improved with knight c3. Wow. Knight c3 is nice. Oh, this is nice. I mean, I mean, when I looked at this, knight d2 is clearly good as well, because the knight comes in and, you know, it's the black king. Just look at the black king. But knight c3, what a move that Richard found. And okay, I see the point of this now. Well, okay, this is going to come here with tempo, or in actual fact, it's not even that. It's the queen h5's. The queen is the only piece defending that square. So you have to take, and now a beautiful idea that Richard's found, rook e8. Fantastic. And all of a sudden, it's our g pawn, knight e7, and now rook e1. Brilliant idea. We're threatening to take that one and queen. And if king takes here, we queen immediately. So black has to try rook e5. And now rook takes e5 happens. And now rook f8 check. And after this one, just pawn takes c3. And we're not going to rush to queen this one. We're going to get rid of the knight first. Beautiful line there by Richard Palliser in the notes. Fantastic line. Okay, I'm going to go through this line again. I know some of these things are very complex, and I want to, you know, reinforce some of the variations so we don't forget them. So this is our suggestion, and now we're going to come to the main move, bishop e7 later on. But f6 is playable, but now we, of course, check, and this is the only option. And, of course, now we saw how strong our g-pawn was in that last line. So let's just defend that one. And our idea is knight h4 and queen h5. Get these two guys into the game. So black has to now really try rook e8, but we're going to continue with king g6 when we go now queen c1, and this is threatening the check over here. Queen d5 has to be tried. We do check, and if king comes back to f7, now we just move our queen back with the amazing idea of knight c3. Fantastic. So the black king should come forwards. I mean, unbelievable, right? And now the best move is actually, and again, this is the kind of position you should analyze with the computer. General principles here, they're not going to be as strong as putting it on a computer. So the computer now indicates that f3 is a brilliant idea. And in actual fact, we want to go rook e4 and use that rook. But again, king safety, we haven't sacrificed yet to get this position. And there's a couple of ideas here. If d3 is only a check, we can move our king. And if the king now takes on h4, d3 hasn't helped black. In actual fact, it's made his position worse because we've got knight c3. And whatever move happens next, rook e4 check, which is going to be leading to checkmate net, most likely with g4. So this is absolutely crushing here. And there's nothing black can do. So d3 is actually not helping, but these lines have become a bit clearer when we look at the other options. c3, trying to stop that knight getting in, is actually met by the computer move b4, trying to misplace one of black's pieces. This is a typical idea. If there's no checkmate, you try to misplace your opponent's pieces first. When d3 check should come, we take the bishop, d2, and now knight takes d2. And here, black should try, and this is again computer analysis, right? But after knight e4, king g7, that king has run its way back, but now king h1. And it's equal material, but again, with queen f4 coming, this is... Okay, the black king's managed to survive an amazing journey, but black is still in a shambolic situation. But that's actually better than taking on d2, because if you take on d2, after bishop takes d2, well, there's only one move to try here because we're not even, we just got the pressure. He's got to try taking this one. And now c4 is a brilliant move because the black queen doesn't have a good square. And if the queen takes here with check, we've got bishop e3, the queen moves again, and now very cleverly rook b1 coming to b5. That black king can now not escape. And after we do play rook b5, we're threatening bishop f2 checkmate. This is why I'm saying this is a computer line. But I think you could be safe in the knowledge if you don't want to remember all this, which you don't necessarily need to. You know, if the black king, let's say we get to this position and you get king g6, you defend your bishop and your opponent plays king h5. I think as long as you remember f3 here, you know, you can't remember everything in a game of chess. As long as you remember to play f3, the moves will come to you. Because the last line we need to analyze what happens if this knight's taken. As long as you know that that piece is really not on offer, these positions, it's clearly black who's struggling. And you should be safe in the knowledge that even with best play, black's in a completely worse position. And we want to cover it here for covering everything in the course, but, you know, just know that in advance. And in this position, well, if he does take that one, we can actually now just come into f6. And this stops the king from retreating. We have now ideas of g4 and bringing our rook around at the right moment. So d3, and now actually the best way to put the king at computer lines is not on this square, because then g4 can be met by bishop takes g4 and our f pawn is kinged, but king f1. And now black is really helpless against this check. Bishop h3 is a clever computer idea, but now an even clever idea. If g4 is not working, we don't need to take that bishop, rook e4. And this is the other idea of f3. At some point, the rook or something, probably the rook, comes to h4. Mate will appear soon. I mean, unbelievable lines, right? I mean, this looks like some old romantic game from the 1700s, doesn't it? But it's modern day analysis. I mean, again, you're not going to get in any course any deeper analysis in the Max Lang than you're getting here. And the reason I'm going so deep is I want to make this as thorough as possible. You know, I've done some courses in the past where I haven't gone as thorough because I thought I want to keep it nice and simple. But then people have, the feedback has basically been, we want you to analyze everything as deeply as you can. So that's why I'm really making sure I do that here. I want, you know, I want to make this as good a course as I do everything as perfect as I can be. Give it justice it deserves with all these amazing lines. Okay, so let's have a look at this f6 again, because there's one more line we have to look at, and that is with king. Okay, so f6, we go check, king f7. We now play bishop h6. And now rook e8 as played by Fressinet. And after this move, this is a safe move, clearly. We should now just play knight bd2. We don't need to go for the heroics here. Developing is fine. Our knight's not coming to c3, so finishing development. And now after rook takes c1, we have an interesting option, but the correct way to recapture here is with the knight. We saw on the other lines our knight comes to h4. Why? Because we got this lovely swinging move that brings our queen in. But in this case, this is a much more direct way of doing it. Black always needs to play queen d5. There's no other good way to defend this. Bringing the king out. We've just seen some fun lines with that. I don't want to go there again. It's too much of a headache, but they're not good for black. And in this position, there's a lovely way to play knight takes c4. And again, this is just trying to get our queen to h5. This can't be taken because this check is just destroying the position because of queen e8. Otherwise, our g-pawn becomes that major asset again. And after knight c4, well, black, I mean, okay, let's have a look at one more line where the king comes out. So I don't know what else black can play. We're even material up here. So let's just, for fun, look at king g6. Well, okay, this is actually the best move now. The problem is we can't play what we did in the last line, defending that one, because now our knight does drop. But what we should just do, we don't, again, if we can't see a clear path through the complications, then you can just keep it simple. Bishop f4. let's just keep it simple. And here, well, you know, I mean, queen takes c4 is a mistake, but if you take on g7, it's equal in material, but clearly, we could just go b3, for example, and clearly black's king has no protection still. We're not going to win this one quickly, but with knight d3 coming in and our pieces being better, we're going to win the game. You know, it's a big advantage to white. So what if, well, it's saying that it's still better than queen takes c4 because of queen d3 check. And we queen next move, so winning. Unbelievable variations. And you can just see the fun that we're having with all these lines and the danger that black's in. So let's go back to the drawing board. Taking here, rook g8, bishop g5. And now we come to black's best defense. All the other lines really are just very bad for black. Black in this position has to find bishop e7. He has to find this move. And this is the last option that we're now going to cover. Well, after bishop e7, we just take it. We add a tempo. Tempo is important. And this is the most accurate move. Rook e1, not as accurate because it allows bishop e6. This is better, keeping the tempo up. And again, black has to be very careful here. And again, you know, there's a lot of lines here. Again, I am covering them all. Black has to find king takes e7. I mean, imagine playing this against unprepared opponent. How many players would take with their king here? He's got to give up on the idea of castling queenside and take with a king. And he's got to try to navigate the king back here to get close to equality. If he takes with something else here, this is why I also like bishop takes here. Let's say he takes with the queen. Well, we're very simple. We don't, again, we don't play rook e1 because that helps black. We just take on d4. And black is in huge trouble here because he won't be at a castle due to this one. Rook e1's a threat. And in this position, we're a pawn up. Rook g7 is not even possible because now rook e1, bishop e6, knight f5. And this just wins. So queen takes kind of looks like a normal move, right? Because black wants to get his king castle. But now just simply knight takes d4. This is one of the issues that black has in a number of these lines. If black's queen moves away from d4, we take that pawn. So what about knight takes? Well, knight takes is also bad. And this is one case where you might be like, boo. I mean, simple is good. And queen takes d4 is the best move. We've got to play the best move. I know the queen's come off. We're going to now, black has to grab here, get equal material. But the reason I'm suggesting this is that our initiative continues now with knight b5. And black still is in a lot of trouble in this line. Bishop h3 doesn't quite work. Excuse me. Because we take on c7. We take on a8. That is a rook. Bishop takes g2 is the only try. This check can just be met by the king move. And after bishop takes g2, we have f3. And this does look scary, but it's only two pieces. And after bishop takes f1, king takes, well, we're going to play knight a3, be a pawn up in the ending. Simple as that. We might lose this knight after rook a8, rook g8, but it doesn't matter. This pawn is a goner. So bishop h3 doesn't work there in this position. Now, king d8 is also not working because we can play rook d1, has to be met by bishop d7. And again, something like knight to a3. And we're going to be a pawn up yet again in the ending. So this is a simple way to play. b5 will just be met by knight takes. So this is another way to just get a very good game. So black's only other try is knight d5 when we play knight to c3. Keeping the pressure up, black has to take on c3 because bishop h3 doesn't work this time to knight takes d5. And if bishop takes d2, we can throw in knight f6 check. And now king e7 is critical, attacking the knight. If the king comes to f8, we've got a decoy tactic. Knight takes h7, check. And that can't be taken because we captured a bishop. And if the king moves, well, we might as well come back. And now that we've grabbed that pawn, it's obviously useful to have the extra pawn. We play our normal get out of jail move here, which is f3. And the king comes out of jail. You have to take on f1. And in this position, well, enough said. So king e7 is a better try, at least attacking the knight. But now we have knight h5. And I really like this move. We're attacking that one. But more importantly, we're getting back to g3, which stops all the initiative. Bishop has to really take here. And after here, well, you've got to try to keep that one. And now our knight gets back to g3. And we remain a piece up. So let's just have a look at that again. So actually, knight takes. Unfortunately, we have to swap queens. But as you saw in those variations, the ensuring variations are at least a pawn up for us. And if black doesn't want to go a pawn down, he'll most likely go a piece down. So that's one case while we get queens. We want to get rid of the queen. In this case, the black queen, because the c7 square will remain loose to our knight coming in and targeting that square. So after all these options, I suppose we can now conclude why king takes e7 is actually best. It's best because it's the only way to hold on to this precious pawn on d4. If black loses this precious pawn on d4, black, we don't even go for checkmate. We just go for being a simple pawn up. So even though this is a very tactical battle, you can often change the tactics into an ending, an advantage in the ending, which is what we want to do here. So after king takes e7, what do we do? Well, now it is time to give the check. And here, yet again, black has a very difficult choice to make. And he's only got one move again. And the one move is king to f6, quite shockingly. He's got to find this move again, otherwise he's worse. Bishop e6 is black's most popular choice. And this move it's black's most popular, and it looks much more natural to the human eye. So you're more likely to get this move. But the issue is, after rook e4, we start to target these pawns again. And we go back to our simple plan of trying to win a pawn on this square with a nice advantage and a better pawn structure. We do always have a better pawn structure in the ending. So after rook e4, what can be played? Well, let's just have a look. Rook e4. And for example, now queen d5, which is a move always to keep an eye open for, falls into our basic tactical idea here, which is, you should know this move by now, always the move to keep an eye on for. Iron, could be an iron it down. And the move here is knight c3. Remember, this move is first. It either works or it doesn't work. In this position, it works because we win the queen. So queen d5 does not work here. Now, rook takes g7 is, again, a very normal move from black, because this pawn, it causes black so many problems, and black just wants to get rid of this pawn to you know, get it out of the way. But this is too slow, because now, after rook takes g7, we just take on d4. We threaten knight to f5 check, so the knight has to be captured. And here, black should try something like queen here, gaining a little tempo. But let's just have a look at this position here. We're not material up, but we're not material down. Our king is totally safe. Black's king is always exposed. We have easy development. Knight comes out, rook comes across. We also have the better pawn structure. This pawn weak, this pawn under attack. These pawns weak in the ending. And after something like rook g4, trying to swap off, I would even suggest keeping the pieces on with rook d1, because we are going to be going for the attack with this knight coming in. So the more pieces we have, the better. And this is one case where we don't want to swap into an ending, even though we're better in that ending. We want to go for the maximum from the position. And now let's say queen g6, trying to go rook g8, knight c3. And after rook g8, g3 really stops everything. And now that we defended our king very adequately, we are ready to increase the attack. The queen can't go there, but you get the idea. The knight coming in. c6, only move to stop both of those ones. And now very cleverly, queen e3. And now we do go for that one. And this square here, b6, stopping both those ideas. And the last clever move, our knight wants to find the right way in. How would you move that knight in now? Good question for you guys. Which is the best way? This goes back to looking at your developed pieces. Can they do anything? They can't do anything immediate. So you need to try and do a little bit of maneuvering. It can't come to e4, that's covered. But in actual fact, coming to e2 keeps everything secure. And we're also looking for ideas of now the knight coming to one of these two squares. And let's not forget, we open the line for queen to a3 check, which is very, very strong move here. And yeah, this is just good. Long variations. So after this move bishop e6, which is a bad move, we play rook e4, simply just try and take that pawn. Rook g7 allows us easy play. So rather than rook g7, black should try something else. But what can he play? He can't go queen d5. We've seen why. Can he try f5, trying to push us away immediately? Well, he can try it, but this is also very loosening. It loosens this bishop here, and it allows us, I would say, a rather surprising move. The rook, there's no immediate sacrifices anywhere, but the rook can just go over to h4, keeping the pressure on d4, but keeping some ideas over there as well. Now, if black takes on g7 in this position, we just go back to going knight takes d4. And we saw this kind of idea a minute ago. And this is quite promising. Let's say queen d5, threatening checkmate. Well, again, g3 is just a simple way to stop this. And if rook d8, going for some play, we now have our normal knight c3. The queen has to move again. And let's just take on c6. Where do we move the queen here? It looks normal to come over to this square. But in actual fact, where's it going next? An even better idea is to go to f1 so that our next move brings in our last piece, rook e1. The queen here defends the e1 square. This actually occurred in the game Max Jul, Van Hoorn, Dutch League 1927. Max Jul went on to become world champion. And these old games, these lines are much more popular without computer analysis, but this whole position after bishop a6 just seemed very unpromising for black. One more line with f5, rook h4, is king f7. And this way black is trying to run away. And this was actually the original game with Farny versus Tartakova, Baden-Baden, 1914. So let's have a look at the original game. White just took on h7. And after everything came off here, black has managed to maintain his pawn on d4. But these pawns can also be targets when combined with his king. And now queen c1 was a very interesting way to play. Rather than moving the knight to d2 straight away, white wants to get his queen into the game. Not swapping queens, but if queen d6 is played, then it comes here. If black doesn't cover f4, we bring our queen to f4, the knight comes in, the rook comes in. This queen c1 we've seen a couple of times, right? We've seen it in one case to defend our piece on h6, and we've seen it in this case just to get in on the dark squares. And after queen d6, well, I don't know what else you can play. I mean, it's just very promising. Queen d6 was played in the game, but it's very hard to stop this idea now. And we're equal on material. Black's king is weak. Let's have a look how the game went a little bit more. We came in, And now you could go knight to this square, but actually now the queen's here, we've got the other option, which we always have, which is more attractive because we have the knight coming on here. Do note that c3 is now not working because we come in, and if queen here, we've got knight takes d4, and this can't be captured because of this one. So after bishop e6, rook e4, f5, and rook takes g7. The only thing I suppose black could try, the last one, is d3, the critical test. That pawn is so weak, you might as well try using it. Now, where do we put our knight? Do we put it on c3, which looks very normal, or d2? And I think that both squares are good. But in this case, generally I want to put my knight on c3 because it's more active. But in this case, d2 is better because we've got a threat. And c3 may look nicer, but at the end of the day, it's not always the moves that look nice. It's the moves that have the most points to them. And this one has the most point. Now, if black takes on c2 and plays queen d3, trying to get the queens off, there's no point really taking here now because that pawn becomes strong. But if we play queen a4, we keep the queens on with the initiative. Now, rook takes g7 is the normal move here, but a6 is quite interesting. When we should go rook e3, and after b5, black is able to get the queens off. But by taking this one and just going rook c3, okay, black is not getting checkmated. Again, I know you're going to be like, boo, but his shoddy pawn structure means that we have a simply better ending here. So rook takes g7, a little bit more dynamic, but now queen b5 comes. And this position was seen before by the young Norwegian guy, Mihalovov, I can't pronounce the name, against Sanovic, Lisbon 2020, when rook e3 was okay. But queen b5 is actually a novelty, a new idea, and even stronger because we have these dark squares and ideas are coming over here, and of course taking the pawn. And after something like rook g8, we just go g3. g3, there's no tactical way that black can break through our pawns here. And we have a number of threats, queen c5, queen b7, and also ways to get our last piece into the game. Big advantage. So d3, knight b d2 looks right. And after now, pawn takes here, queen takes. If queen d3, we flick the queen over here. If black plays rook g7 straight away, then we can go for knight takes c4. And this is even better than that last line. Yes, black is equal on material. Yes, black has got his king to some safety. But our pieces are so well centralized after the very nice forward move, knight to e5, with some ideas of this check, we have an ongoing initiative. The knight has to be taken. And now this check is going to be one way to get our rook to the 7th rank. So queen f5 at least stops that. But now f3, just securing our central pieces. Our king is better. And even after, let's say, c6, well, the knight's done its job. And I think it's time to go knight g4 here. And this allows our queen to get on to these dark squares. And our knight can always come back to this nice solid square in the middle. Advantage to white here. So basically these lines with bishop e6 are very good for white, as long as we remember rook e4. And then if we can take this pawn, we simply take that pawn. If we can't take that pawn, then we should aim for the other pawns. And it's very easy to play. That's why the best move here is king to f6. Amazingly. How many players will find this move, I don't know. All the other lines just worse than black. What do we do now? Knight d2. We attack the pawn. We bring our pawn in. And now black has a choice again. King takes g7 looks like the best try. Get that pawn, get the king away. Black can go wrong immediately with knight queen to d5. This is a move that black often tries to play, but in this case, it is actually a big mistake. Let's remember the black king is on f6 and it hasn't got home yet. Can you see why this move's a mistake? It's because of a tactic we saw earlier, but for a different reason. This was played in Jingchio versus Di Premio, Mantova 2012. I don't know if I pronounced any of those right. The reason this is a mistake is actually because of the rather surprising knight takes c4. And in the last time we did this, it was to divert the queen away from the defense of h5. But in this position, it's to divert the queen away from defense of the king side in general. Our queen is now threatening to come in with checkmate or to h6 with a devastating attack. So black is forced to try and run away. But now we come in anyway. King h8 leads to checkmate after rook e8 checkmate. And king to f8 allows the very nice touch. Keep the initiative going. Now we sacked a piece. We've got to play of urgency. Let's look for checks. Rook e8. And that's diverting the king away from there. And after the king moves, rook e1. And this leaves white with too many strong pieces attacking in the position. And this can't be defended, actually. I mean, you can have a look at this yourselves, but with these guys, we often see this in this our gambit lines. In a lot of variations, black never able to get these two pieces out. So even though you're a piece down, you're actually two pieces up here. And with the simple idea of coming to e8, which can't really be defended, this is extremely strong. The other idea, as well as queen here, is to do something with our knight. It's not to come here, that's defended. But in actual fact, we can bring our knight around to d2. And if we go, for example, queen e8, king d6, the knight comes into e4. So this knight d2 is a nice little attacking thing to do. And black is helpless in this situation. So it's winning. Oh dear. It's hard lines these, aren't they? But they're fun lines, and I know you've got a lot to remember, but if you can remember these lines, what a repertoire you're going to have. And we've gone deeper than anyone else has gone with our work here. So hence why this is turning to a much bigger course than I think anyone anticipated when we first went out with the Grandmaster Gambits. I will try to summarize things at the end, as I always do, if you can't get through all the analysis. So king f6, knight d2, and now bishop e6, simply defending the pawn, allows us to go knight e4, and then queen d2. Our queen comes in this way again, and our coordination and safe king certainly compensate. We're going to go rook d1 and queen f4. So let's have a look at one line. Queen d5, queen f4, coming into these two squares. Queen f5, black trying to get pieces off. And now I think we can grab that one. And here, this is one of the better lines to black. Let's not deny it. When black should now play king h8. But after knight g3, queen f6, I would now suggest knight d2, with the knight heading into these squares. And this is a very unbalanced position. I think black's got near equality here because he's at last got his king around to h8. But I still take white because our king has that extra pawn protection and our knights are looking more dangerous in this position. So saying that, the more commonly placed move, king h8 is a good move, is bishop d5. But this is a blunder. Yet again, the knight now comes to g3. And if this pawn is grabbed, we can continue with our initiative, knight to e5. And let's say the king now tries to run away. If rook c8, well, our queen has other ideas. Our knights and queens coordinating tremendously well here. So king to h8, and we now come to d6 anyway. And black's king is the main problem with his position here. So I think after this idea, knight b d2, if black plays bishop e6, and now after queen d2, tries queen d5 and tries at all costs to get the queens off and finds king to h8. He's close to equality, but knight g3 is a key concept to remember, and I still take white here. Remember this knight d2 coming in like this. The other line where black's near equality is if he goes king takes g7 straight away, but this one does allow us to take on c4. And after king h8, he hasn't quite got equality because of knight e5. And knight takes e5 was played in Karpatchev versus Fleer. Actually, sorry, queen f6 was played in that game, I believe. And now I've got the notes. Queen takes d4 was played, but I find that hard to believe. I think knight takes d4 was played in that game, and white is just simply a pawn up here. Knight takes e5 looks more natural when knight takes e5 is one of the main lines given at the moment, where, I mean, a lot of people say black's equal here, but I don't really see it. After queen d5, yeah, black has got his king to some safety. He's created a threat, but the normal way to stop this threat is g3. I mean, when they say black's equal, I think what they mean is black gets a couple of threats in. And here, well, we do have to go into the ending, and it's really how do you evaluate this ending on equal material? I evaluate it as better for white because this has to be defended, and we can now seize the initiative with rook e7. f7 is very weak in these lines, and we have our other rook coming in. Our knight has ways to come here, and I don't see how black can be equal in this position. This is a better ending. But one of black's better tries in this complex variation. So some long lines there, and we can just go over some of them again. I mean, I'm not going to go over the lines, but after this position where we go bishop g5, let's just evaluate this and try to simplify things, because you've got a lot to take in. The thing to remember is you're playing normal moves here. So if you can't remember all the theory, stick to your normal moves. The only way for black to try and get equality is this bishop e7, king, and the king comes round here. In those lines where the black king gets around on those squares, it's important, I think, to remember to bring our queen in via d2 and then via f4. Try to get our queen in this way. The other thing we've got to consider, if we don't have any immediate sort of wins in those lines, where do we put the knight? Most of the time, as we are seeing in these variations, our knight comes into d2, either trying to take the pawn or coming in to e4. When it gets to e4, we want to come forwards. In some cases, we can defend our king by coming back to g3. If black doesn't play bishop e7 bishop e7, we have rook e1. Rook e1 is a useful move to play, and I think the thing to remember is just keep the initiative up here. Keep playing developing moves. Keep playing these developing energetic moves. You're never worse. You always have at least compensation. I prefer white in all of these lines. We have analysed this deeper than anyone else has ever. And the conclusion I think we can make is that black is maybe equal, according to the computer, with some of those last lines we saw. But in a practical sense, his king is the one which is always going to be more open to attack in the long run. So we take white. So bishop c5, a move you're going to face in these very interesting positions. But black has to be very accurate after bishop g5 rather than rook e1. And bishop g5 certainly puts black under a lot of pressure in these variations. Hard work though, these are, but you know, it's going to be fun when you get them remembered.